Christy, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using this super adorable set called Bear Hugs by Reverse Confetti, and I'll also be using this wildflower pattern paper pad by Craft. This is 6.5 by 6.5 and it has a watercolor theme and I think it's so pretty. So I'm going to start out by coloring my image with some Copic markers, and I'm going to be using some warm grays for my little koalas. So I'm using W00, W1, W3, and W5. And I want to keep these very light, so I started out with a thin layer of W00, and now I'm adding just a bit of W1 in my shadowed areas. So when I want to keep things very light colored, I do start lightest to darkest. When I start darkest to lightest, I tend to do high contrast, which I love in my coloring. But since this pattern paper pad is so soft, I wanted to keep my coloring soft to match. So now I'm going in with my W3, now that I've laid in my highlights and my shadows, and I'm just going to emphasize those. That is going to be my darkest color, except for just a few little touches of the W5, which I'll show you in a minute. But first I'm going to take that W1 and just blend out the edges of that W3. And I'm just starting with my shadows at the top and leaving the bottom of their faces nice and bright. And then I'll use that W00 to just color in that highlighted area. So the bottom of their faces, the edges of their ears, and then a little bit on the mama koala's arm and the side of her body there with her leg. And now I'm going in with that W5 like I mentioned, and I'm just putting little bits of color in there in the very deepest, darkest areas where I want there to be a little more contrast. I can't help myself. I love contrast in my coloring, and I just had to add it a little bit. But instead of adding it all around the shadows like I usually do, I just put little touches here and there where the ear is connected to their body, right under her chin, and right on her belly where it's touching the tree. I'm going to use W7 and W9 for their noses, and I'm starting with the W9 and just doing a little bit of a shadow at the top there, and then I'll take that W7 to just blend that out, coloring right over the edge of the W9 to just make that transition nice and smooth. And since I already know that that part is dark, I didn't mind going darkest to lightest. For the ears, I'm taking R20 and R22, just adding a little bit of that R22 in the inside of the ears, really close to the head, and then also just a touch of that on the inside petals of my flower. And then I'm going to blend out the ears with the R20, and I'll finish up my flower petals as well. And then I'm also going to take that R20 and just give the koalas some rosy cheeks. I thought that would be, just adds another little pop of color on the card, and I just thought it would make them look nice and happy and cute. So I'll just grab the W00 though for that and color right over the rosy cheeks, because I do want to knock that pink back and make it look just a little bit more natural, a little more blended in. Moving on to my tree, I'm using E40, E43, and E44. And I am going to color lightest to darkest again because I want to make sure it doesn't get too dark. I want to keep it nice and light. So I started out with that E40, just giving it an all over wash, and then I'm laying in my shadows with the E43. So I'm putting shadows down on both sides of the tree trunk and the larger parts of the tree branches so that they look like they have a rounded appearance. And then I'm keeping the shadow just on the bottom of the thinner branches just because there's not enough room for to shadow from both sides, or they would just get too dark. So I'm adding in my dark shadows now with that E44 now that I knew where I wanted them to go, and then just blending back out once more with that E43, just making that transition nice and smooth. And then I'm going to finish up with the E40 as my highlight. And just make sure everything is blended really well together. The one issue that you may run into when working lightest to darkest, which is why I don't do it often, is that you can oversaturate your paper and then you'll have some bleeding outside of the lines. And this did happen to me. I did get a little bit of bleeding outside the edge on the left side of the trunk, but you can push that back with the colorless blender, which I did. And then if that doesn't work, which it didn't take it all out for me for this color, some colors work better than others, then you can just go over that with a white gel pen, which I will show you guys later. And I probably wouldn't have had so much bleeding if I hadn't done a double layer on the tree, but I just really wanted to make sure that my blending was nice and smooth. I don't like harsh lines. So now that I have my tree all colored up, I wanted to add some wood grain texture. I started out with the E43, but that wasn't quite dark enough, so now I'm going in with that E44, and I'm just being really careful to use the very tip of the marker so that the lines stay nice and thin. And I'm just adding some little circles and squiggles and just some little imperfect lines. As long as you stay with the grain of the wood, you can't go wrong because trees are all unique. But I really think it adds a lot of definition. It just goes that little bit extra to bring the image to life. For my leaves, I'm using G20 and G21, and I'm going to start by giving them a base coat with that G20, just adding that nice, bright, fresh, light green. And then I'm going to take that G21 and using the very tip of my marker, I'm just going to add a thin line down the center of each of those leaves. I'm not going to go all the way to the tip with that. I want to just kind of fade off about 3/4 of the way towards the tip. And then I'm just going to blend the tips of those with that G20 once more. And I will also use that G21 to just color in the center of my flower. So I've die cut out my images with the matching dies, and now I'm just taking my Sakura white jelly roll pen and I'm just going to go over the very edge of that white border where the marker didn't go back into the base of the tree. It was probably still a little bit too early for me to do that. If I had waited for it to dry, it might have done better. But it's no trouble with that white gel pen. It completely covers up any of that bleeding outside the lines and you would never know the difference. So I thought I would walk you through the choosing of my pattern papers today. Usually I do this off camera, but I thought I'd share it with you since a lot of you have commented about pattern paper. And I definitely wanted to start with this print here because it reminded me of eucalyptus. So now I'm just flipping through and trying to pick other patterns that might go well with it. I really liked this aqua stripe. I thought that would work perfectly for my sky background. And now I'm just looking for something to accent on the side of my card next to the eucalyptus print, or what I'm calling the eucalyptus print. And I want to go with one of these white on white prints. So there was two different ones that I liked. I liked the stripe, and then there was one with tiny little florals. And I actually ended up using both of those white prints in the end. So I die cut two pieces of those pattern papers using the Lawn Fawn Stitch Circle Stackables and the Scallop Circle Stackables. And I did die cut an extra piece of plain white cardstock with the scallop border because these pattern papers are quite thin. So I'm just going to add some glue to that and I'll layer my white piece on top of that. And you can see that I did go with the tiny floral print to layer behind my aqua stripe. That's going to be my sky background, and that's because I didn't want the two stripes being right next to each other. So these two together are going to make up my focal panel. So I'll just press those into place, making sure that the lines are nice and straight with how I want my scallops to be on the card. And then I'm going to grab my image here with my cute little koalas in the tree, and I'm going to add some Tombow Mono to the back of that. And I did run that through my Cuttlebug with that Lawn Fawn Stitch Circle Stackable so that it would have that same little border at the bottom there. Then I took two clouds from the MFT Cloud 9 dies, and I'm going to add this smaller one right to the top left corner. And then on the bottom one, I stamped the word Bear Hugs from that same stamp set, using my Misty to line that up very carefully. and I'm just going to tuck that under the tree on the right. For my card base, I have a piece of MFT's cement gray cardstock, scored and folded to a standard portrait style card. So that is 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall, and it folds at the top. And then I'm just going to take some Tombow Mono Multi Glue, and I'm going to glue this white stripe print flush to the right side of the card. And then I'll add this watercolor eucalyptus print flush to the left side of the card. So I just have a little bit of that white stripe peeking out over on the right. And I thought that just accentuated the piece quite nicely. I'll just line that up nice and straight and press that into place. I've added some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll just go ahead and peel off those little backer sheets, and I'm going to line that up in the center of my card. I'll dab a bit more glue at the base of my tree trunk and add my flower right on top of that, just for another little touch of color. And then I'll pop my card base in my Misty so that I can stamp my inside. I'm using some Lawn Fawn Manatee ink, and I'm inking up the additional koala bear that comes in that stamp set, as well as a second sentiment that says "Just for You." And since this ink does dry back quite a bit into the cardstock, I'm just going to ink that up a second time so that I'm sure to have a good impression. As a finishing touch, I'm going to take some Ranger Multimedia Matte, and I'm going to dot that across the card from the top left corner to the bottom right. And then I will take some Pretty Pink Posh sequins. I have the 4mm in the Sparkling Clear and the 6mm in the Marshmallow color. And I'm just going to add those right over top of the adhesive using my Pick Me Up tool. This works great for grabbing these little sequins and pressing them down into place. And that is going to complete our card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the softer Copic coloring and the details with the trees and the mixing of the pattern papers and the adorable little image. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Here's an extra couple videos you may also enjoy. You can get to those by just clicking on the little video clip. And you can always click on my photo to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. I thank you guys so much for all your comments and support. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.